Greetings, my name is Ryan Nitsch. I'm a Senior Solutions Architect with Amazon Web Services. Joining me here today is Hunter from IBM Apptio. Hunter, always a pleasure having you here. Tell us a little bit more about you.
Hey, yeah, thanks, Ryan. Yep, so I'm working for IBM Cloudability under the basically really focusing on forecasting and planning part of IBM Cloudability, as well as a few other topics that I touch on. But I'm a senior product marketing manager there, and yeah, love it, love FinOps, love working in the Cloudability space, man.
So let's dive into it. I have a bit of a mixed bag of customers. Some of my customers are already doing formal budgeting and forecasting. Why the air quotes? Some of them are in their infancy and they are doing it in a very reactive manner using things like spreadsheets. It's super ugly and painful. And then other customers, a fairly large portion of them, by the way, are not doing a budget or a forecast in any form or capacity. They're still looking at their AWS bill. They're getting that sticker shock at the end of the month, but they're not looking around the corners as of yet. But we're going to talk about both of those. Hunter, from a semantics perspective, how do we define budgeting and forecasting? What's the difference?
Well, in short, a budget is really a point in time or a dot on a line, right? And your forecast is the basically the prediction looking into the future at different intervals, okay? And that forecast can change along with time, but that budget is going to be a lot more static. And typically that budget is also going to be something that's a little bit more formal and it's needed for some kind of reporting or request for financing, et cetera, et cetera. There's also the way we talk about this, we also kind of throw in planning because you can kind of determine the best path forward without actually having a formal budget or a dot on a line, right? So a lot of times you can wind up with many plans. One of them is chosen for a budget, but you will continuously forecast your numbers to understand your spend to plan and understand how your actual spending is changing over time versus that set in point in time for a budget that you created, right?
So for the customers that I've observed, there's two buckets of challenges. There's those customers that don't have a planning, a forecasting strategy as of yet. But then there are those customers that are in the infancy and they're dealing with things like spreadsheets, as I mentioned. In many cases, it's a finance team that's trying to get information to put together a forecast or a budget. They're don't have that information available to themselves. They have to reach out to an IT team or an infrastructure team, different prioritizations, different languages. And I think most commonly by the time they get that budget or that forecast completed, it's woefully out of date and almost needs to be restarted immediately again. Are you seeing different or additional challenges over and above those on your side of the fence?
Well, I think that, yeah, I think it just varies, right, from customer to customer. And as you say, the people that I talk with, when you press people that say they don't have a formal strategy, well, how do you budget, right? How are you predicting your numbers, or how do you get financing for the next quarter or whatever? And they'll usually just say, well, we just add 10% or something like that, right? Or just look at last month's forecast and try to extrapolate, or last month's spending and try to extrapolate into the future. And the reality is, the reason why is because most of these teams, they don't even know where to start, or it's so hard to have those conversations with anybody that knows about the financial aspects of this, especially if they don't have like a dedicated FinOps persona or IT finance persona. Then like, yeah, it's how do I figure this out? Because they don't even know where to begin. And so we all know that so many organizations, even the organizations that are doing this well now, they've been in the place in the past where it's really difficult to articulate the what and the why for the spend in the future to get a budget that helps support things. And typically, other people in the business or organization on the finance side, they don't really have an understanding of how much some of this stuff can cost when you're talking about launching a new application or initiative to support things that are going on in the organization or externally, right? So it's really hard to put together the what and the why to ask for that money without being able to articulate the justification.
So for up and running current workloads, you've got things like AWS budgets, but many budgeting tools just take the month or the last couple of months and then extrapolate that. So it makes a couple of assumptions around, either the spend is going to stay the same or it's going to grow in a very linear fashion. We're going to see the same percentage of growth month on month. And for many businesses, that's not very accurate. If we look at seasonal change, if we look at customers reinvesting their savings into new innovations, new explorations, or if we look at customers who are onboarding something completely new, something like a new AWS product or service, or something that's very new to their business. Talk to me about Cloudability. What does Cloudability bring to the table to alleviate some of that? What are some of the knobs and dials that customers have available to them?
Well, as you said, right? So typical and traditional forecasting capabilities within existing solutions, right? Or things like you just talked about from AWS. What they're doing is they are extrapolating. They're looking at past consumption data and just drawing that sweet straight line right into the future. And what you see is that the way that even this like spreadsheet process that we were talking about, a lot of times teams are trying to compile all of those little forecasts for their resources supporting different applications of workloads, right? Trying to get all of that into a spreadsheet to see what the next however many months of data they can get is going to look like. But there's two really big gaps. And one of them is, hey, we know that there's going to be increased demand that's not based on seasonality, because it's kind of easy to predict, hey, Christmas is going to be a really busy season for retail. Like the IRS is always going to have a busy season around, April, right? It's just Amazon that kind of
Prime for Amazon,
Yeah, Prime Days, and again, perfect example for the holiday season is the Amazon Marketplace, right? Oh my gosh! And so with all of that, that's kind of a little bit more out of the box and a little bit easier to predict. But if my marketing team comes to me and says, hey, we're going to launch this new product in a giant new campaign at the end of March, right? Then as the IT team supporting all these cloud resources, they're saying, hey, we're going to need a new app, and we're expecting website and the existing app traffic to skyrocket at that period of time. How do I account for non-seasonal massive expenditure increase in consumption, right? As well as net new spend that's going to be needed to support new applications or workloads. And the answer to that is what we have built into Cloudability at the IBM Cloudability standard level. It's to say that we can incorporate that net new spend and build out hierarchical budgets, so you can see, hey, look, we can take our existing cloud spend, okay, and roll that up into a plan, and then you can add in percentages of growth during certain periods of time of the year, as well as add net new spend and have descriptions in there so that people can understand, like, hey, what initiative is this supporting and what are the expected kind of workloads that are going to look like in there as we're building that out. You can even pull in other factors from the organization and put notes around that so you can understand kind of additional cost factors within your cloud program and put that in as part of that budget. That can be hierarchical as well. So you can see, like, hey, we have for this team within the cloud organization X amount of spend, but this subset right here those are the people supporting X workload, right? And we need to understand how much that workload is going to cost as a net new driver. And that way, and where we're going with this is, once I put in all that net new spend, I can also factor in percentage growth from that start date. So in this example, I said the end of March, right? Okay, well, so we put these numbers in for March, and then say in April, we know it's going to grow maybe by 20 or 30%. But then from there, it grows less, maybe 10% in May, 10% in June as time goes on. So I can build out a really much more accurate budget to submit to my finance team to request funds. I can also forecast those numbers at different intervals to track my spend to plan. And because, as I mentioned, we're building out these budgets in a really granular way, we can track that spend to plan in a hierarchical way as well. And I can see where the variance exists. I can say, hey, look, as I'm tracking in my forecast, I can dive into the details and say, look, for this team or this group of workloads, they're the ones that were more expensive than we thought they were going to be. Okay, and then I can go and talk to people, have those conversations, build in justification, and adjust my forecast in the future. Okay, where again, it's like, hey, change my budget, request more money.
This also taps into things. If you look at larger organizations, your chargeback, your showback process, team accountability uh, feeds in here as well.
Yeah, all those dynamic allocation capabilities within Cloudability, which are just absolutely amazing. The intelligent business mappings that we have, and this ability to kind of cluster your tags and cloud costs in a way that makes sense to the business, right? So that people can articulate and understand, again, that chargeback, showback story, that's all pulled into these budgets, right? So you can see the breakdowns based on your existing cloud structures. You don't have to rebuild anything. Okay, and you're not just putting generic cost increases across different groups, right? You're really getting very specific, or have the ability to. You can do it at a generic level if you just want to say, hey, look, we're kind of expecting things to grow faster than we thought. We're not sure why. We're just going to throw an extra 30% on there in March, right? Again, in this example, and we'll add in the details later, but we know we're going to have this growth. Okay, you can do that too. But the idea is, you want to have those existing cost structures so you can get very, very specific about tracking spend to plan, about holding teams accountable, right? But importantly, also being able to report to finance teams, explain the why, give them good justifications, and also improve your own accuracy of forecast, right, to the budget. Whereas, in simpler terms, spend to plan. Because the more accurate you are, the more likely you're going to get what you ask for in the future, and the better your organization can report on their numbers. Because especially if you're a public company, right? The goal is 5%. If your forecast isn't at least 5% accurate, even if you do well, sometimes stock goes down when people report numbers, right? If they say, hey, we were expecting to go up by X and we went up by more than 5% more than that, then it shows the industry, hey, you're not really good at forecasting your numbers. And that can be a bad thing, right?
Well, on that topic, forecast variance, is that something that customers typically face challenges around?
Well, and that's kind of the benchmark of the maturity model for FinOps. What's your forecast variance? And most organizations are kind of at 10 to 20%, which isn't horrible, right? But even the FinOps Foundation defines the run phase as being less than 10%. Again, the industry standard for all other finance numbers is 5%. Yeah. And so that's kind of your personal self-challenge goal if you're a cloud organization, is get down to that 5%. That's what's going to impress your IT finance people. Until it's 5%, the finance team is going to look at numbers and go, that's squishy. Right.
It's not just a cloud challenge. I look at it from a stock market perspective. You very frequently see, we met the revenue expectations. We met all of our goals, but then the expectation of the market wasn't met. And it blows up in your face by people dropping your share price. I want to talk very quickly about, for customers who don't have a budgeting and forecasting strategy, or for customers who are doing it in a spreadsheet in a reactive way, what's the easiest way to get a hands-on playtime with Cloudability? You can purchase it through the Cloudability account teams. It's available on AWS Marketplace for purchase. But how do customers get their hands wet? How do they get that guided approach to getting up and running with Cloudability on AWS?
Yeah, well, definitely the best way to do that is to reach out to the account teams and talk with their technical salespeople for, they can really tailor a demo for exactly what you're looking at. The Cloudability for financial planning capability is in Cloudability, the standard SKU that we have for it. So definitely check out Cloudability Standard and what comes with that. It's also that's also going to come with workload planning. So your ability to enable your engineers to be able to forecast and plan specific workloads, right? And the resources that support those. So we can pull the listed prices from AWS and show you, it needs X number of databases supporting it. It needs this much compute, right? And how much is all that going to cost? And forecast that cost before the resource is provisioned as a fully burdened workload, so that you can get that forecast. And then that, again, gives you a benchmark to put into the cloud forecasting solution, so that you can say, hey, look, our engineers have estimated the requirements for this thing. Here's the benchmark. Put it into the budget, right?
And I think it's important to note that, the team that customers are interacting with from Cloudability, these are not just salespeople. These are typically people with a rich experience and a wealth of knowledge with financial systems as well as the cloud. And I think that carries a tremendous weight and benefit for customers.
Yeah, absolutely. That is absolutely our heritage, and that's, the people that actually were like building the cloud financial planning solution. They're literally finance people, so you can actually choose the like financial models that you're using to build the forecasts on top of the machine learning data that we're pulling in. So it's extremely powerful, and again, it's as much of a translator from the technical teams to the finance teams for like the FinOps persona, ITFM, and the financial teams in your organization as it is like a budgeting, planning, forecasting solution, right? And so absolutely, and we have a lot of SMEs on our pre-sales team that are happy to dive into the nuts and bolts with it, and bring your finance people along with you. They're the ones that are going to be impressed by this, and we, again, as Ryan just mentioned, more than happy to speak to them and show them how much it can help translate those cloud costs into meaningful and understandable, digestible pieces of information for them to be able to understand and articulate the budget and where the value from cloud is coming from for you. We should also note too, our services team is part of this story as well. We can incorporate that kind of onboarding and even helping you implement or mature your FinOps practice within your organization as part of the onboarding there. So that's done in a benchmarked engagement is possible with them as well. So again, tons of people with lots of experience. We even have some people in these teams that we're talking about were like part of the story of the beginnings of the FinOps Foundation and stuff. They're very, very experienced. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've got several customer engagements where AWS technical account managers supporting the customer have worked hand in hand with those CS teams, and really, really powerful success for a customer. Hunter, fantastic chatting to you again. It's great having you here, and looking forward to doing another one of these in the future.
Yeah, man, me too. Greatly look forward to it. Always enjoy it, Ryan. Thanks again for having me today.
Your absolute pleasure. Cheers, bye.